Since you are the guest of the house, I will let you call it.
Oh, Tails.
Okay, so Tails you called.
Okay, yep.
Tails.
Hey, okay.
Right.
So with yet another new version of the Batman hitting theaters, we decided to take a look at 2, or 3, I guess, of DC Entertainment's most recent animated tales of the Caped Crusader. In this episode, we'll take a look at Hush and the 2-parter Long Halloween.
In the movie galaxy of the YouTube universe, you have landed on Frame Rate Studio. We are your guide to all things movies. I'm Corey.
I'm Chad.
Up first this week is Batman Hush. Okay, for me, first thing I want to be pointing out here, I love the animation of it. The reason I like it is it's not that blocky box feeling that so many animations do these days.
Yeah.
It felt more, and it's because I grew up in that time, it felt very much more like the 80s and 90s with kind of a nice clean feeling to it. So I just love that aspect of it. Definitely, if you're from an older generation like us in some ways, I mean, we're not that old, but if you grew up with Saturday morning cartoons to say, you'll like the animation.
Yeah, I would agree. The animation's pretty cool. It's one of the, I'd say one of the strong suits of the movie, which is probably foreshadowing that if that's the strong suit. Yeah, anyway, let's keep going.
I like the beginning with the action, the way you jump right into it. And it's on something that's not like random crime fighting thing. Oh, look, we're going to stop this person, and then now we're going to go into it. You also don't have to do any character development because they go into it going, you know who these people are. Yeah. It was just really well done for the intro to get right to it.
I think that's why we wanted to go do the DC animated movies is that is one of the strong points of them. It's taking these stories that you've known if you've been a comic book reader or even a mild comic book reader. They don't take time, we don't have to go through Batman's an orphan yet again. I mean, do we really need to hear that story? I think we all know Batman is an orphan. If you don't know who Batman is an orphan is, you haven't been born yet. I'm seriously, So I will give this credit for that point is that you don't have to go through all these backstories of these characters and who they are and why the Batman doesn't like them. And, you don't have to go into the backstory of Batman and Selina or Batman and Catwoman, whichever way you want to go as far as, them being love interests and everything. You don't have to rehash that, which is nice, so. I will give it credit for that, and I will agree with you for that. And it does get started pretty quick. Yeah.
One kind of side question, though.
Yes.
So when Batman kind of gets all knocked out and he falls and everything, the guy comes up and gets ready to remove his mask.
Yes.
Okay. And how does it protect him?
I believe it electrocutes the guy.
How does it not electrocute?
I don't know. That super stealthy Batman technology that everybody wants. But nobody can get their hands on but Bruce somehow. No, I'm with you. I'm with you though. That's a good question. It's like, okay, well, and why doesn't Batman just electrify his whole suit the whole time? Come on, Bruce. You're better than this. We know you are.
Do you have anything on the opening sides?
My thing on the opening that ties into a lot of stuff is they're trying too hard to force some adult moments in this, in my opinion. And I'll be honest here, I think out of the two of us, I'm probably the least prudish, but it's like, is there a necessity of the kid kicking Bane and then cursing at him? No. It brought you out of it. It kind of ruined the tone of it. It felt like it was like they were tacking it on to like, well, we're going for a hard PG-13 rating, so let's do it with this.
So your little note here of Joker's ooh kinky, you didn't like.
No, I didn't.
Double cuff him, hands and feet.
I mean, yes, it's probably a Joker line. I'm probably being, here's the thing. Once again, I don't know that it was necessary. Did I think it was a funny line? Yes, it was a funny line. I'm not saying it wasn't funny. I just kind of was like, I don't know that we needed that in this.
That was one of the things, is the Joker in animated movies, this was one of the better ones.
Oh, yeah,
I just love, full of one-liners, just like he should be, and one-liners that are just fun. They're fun-liners, that's what they are. So I enjoyed it. I will agree, maybe some of it was a little over the top, and you even have on here the sex scene or allusion to it.
Yeah.
Is that Who was that? Was that Bruce and Selena?
That's him, and it's him and Catwoman. Yes, I
On
mean
the
it's
roof.
there. Yes, and then it goes
Yeah.
into waking up the next day or after whatever has happened. Which use your imagination, kids.
They cuddled.
Yeah, I'm sure they just cuddled. Sure, Corey. Yeah. So in reading the comics, and I need to go back and reread the comics, but it paid more attention to the detective story, and I felt this started to get lost in too much of the love story and not enough of the detective story. Like from what I remember of the comics, I remembered Hush being, like I said, the reveal at the end of who Hush is and everything in the comic it seemed like this was a big deal. And in this, it kind of felt like, yeah, it's this person. Oh, okay. And it just kind of felt like that was second to the Batman, Selena, and Batman trying to be, and Bruce have a normal life story.
I think really loses it is they tried to put in too many characters. They tried to plug in everyone, and the conflict between the real villain and everyone else is lost. That's where I will say I had a issue with it is, especially, I mean, since we're talking about the characters, did not care for the Scarecrow.
Gotcha.
Scarecrow was a very weak character. When he sprays Catwoman with the fear gas, and it doesn't affect her. And he's like, what the? And she goes, nose plugs. Have you smelled yourself? And it's kind of like, does she not breathe through her mouth?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
What? You just get some of these lines that are just so...
It sort of ties into what I'm saying. And it's like, there's certain lines that just felt forced just to try and be a joke. I would go back and agree with you. Probably the line of, the Joker makes doesn't feel out of place for how that Joker is represented in this version, and is actually done well. But like, yes, that kind of feels out of the place for who Scarecrow is and what Scarecrow does. Like, that's not the story should naturally go.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. I mean, I felt as though in some ways the dialogue was actually pretty good, but if you had those moments where it's like, here, we're just gonna shove this in here. To
build on something you were saying, it feels like they try and throw all the villains onto the screen, and some of that is it's like some of the most notable Batman comics or the series, that they usually then pull into a graphic novel it was basically all of the villains show up, which this is always a conversation we get into talks about the difference in mediums that you're using. It's like, which can work this issue, and then you don't get to view the issue, you don't get to read the next issue until a week later. So it's like or a month. So it's like you get to build in your head like what happened that the Scarecrow showed up and all that. Whereas in a movie format, it's like boom, Scarecrow's here, okay, now boom, Scarecrow's done. When you're doing it in a movie format versus that comic format.
And here's my other one other comment I have on here, and then I want to hear more of your own side. I would go through my stuff. Is why does Superman have to be such a prima donna?
I don't know. I don't know.
Do you realize he shows up in more Batman stuff?
Yeah, he does.
Than Batman shows up in his.
Yes, he does.
It's like, and he's absolutely pointless.
Exactly. And I think that when you talk about there being too many villains, I think that for this one, it was also there were too many DC characters in this period. Because yes, I had forgotten about that part. I don't know how. I guess I just kind of had blocked it out of my memory. But when he goes to Metropolis, and I don't know, it just felt like it could have been done better. Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. Yes, Superman is Batman. No, Superman. Yes, is a bit of a prima donna and does seem to have to show up a lot and seem to have to exert his influence. So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Do you have anything else that you're kind of sitting here?
I would say for it being only like an hour and a half long, it feels like much longer, which is never a good thing usually. Like I said, it felt sloggy, and it felt like you got out of the hunt of who Hush was. For me, I would have been okay if that was the route they decided to go down of, we want to explore this love story, but it's like, do it in smaller increments. But doing that big kind of chunk in I don't know if it's the middle, but it feels like the middle of the movie, just kind of all of a sudden, it's like, it's a herky-jerky stop, and then we're focused on something different. That's like, all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, and Hush still exists over here, so you might want to go figure out who it is. I think the only other thing that I can call out is, and I'll bring it up again in the second part of this episode, because I'm not sure it necessarily is the voice actor, but like, Batman always tends to come off a little wooden and a little stilted and never too emotional when it just anyway.
Yeah, and maybe it was this one. I can't remember which one I watched first when we set this
Yeah.
up, but it did start to build on me as I was talking to you the other day. Was Batman's just an unlikable character?
Yeah, yeah.
And so what you're saying, I think that was probably about the time I'm like, he has no emotions. He does nothing. He's just, he has the same emotion level as Sheldon in some ways.
Yeah.
But at least Sheldon's lovable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Your thoughts on Batman, I think, are correct. It's like, it just doesn't feel, he feels emotion, like you said, emotionless and unlikable. Like you were saying, like Sheldon, at least in The Big Bang Theory, is a likable character. Batman just is kind of like, get over yourself. I mean, that's what it gets to after a while with Batman.
The way everybody turns on Superman in all the stories because he's an alien, all these types of things, I'm like, no, at least he still has a heart. It seems like you're doing these things.
Yeah.
But yet everybody's always supportive of Batman, and he's the one with the attitude.
Exactly.
So you got to be fearful of it. So, ready for final thoughts?
Yeah.
Final thoughts.
Let's go.
So my final thought is these animated movies focus too much on trying to get all the villains involved. I enjoyed the movie. I will say I did enjoy it, but I think it was more the art and the animation and just the way it was done. The mystery was okay. I was intrigued, but the ending, like you were saying, was weak. Focused too much on one idea, which was to get as many characters involved as possible, and so you completely missed the bullseye of what the actual point is. And this is obviously, looking at it, probably the inspiration for The Batman.
That was why that was part of why I chose it. Is I know how it goes. Hush goes.
Your final thoughts?
It took what I thought was a great comic series and detective story and reduced it to, I thought, just kind of a mediocre love story. It makes, I feel, poor choices in the story it chooses to tell, and it shoehorns in adult themes, jokes I don't think are necessary to the overall plot of the movie, and I think they feel a little unnatural. I feel it plods along and kind of loses its way in the middle, and you just kind of forget that you're in a detective story trying to figure out who this big villain is, and then, it just, what feels like a very anticlimactic ending. Okay, this is who Hush is, it just kind of ends with a thud as opposed to, ooh, interesting, or that was a cool idea, and everything. Even if it isn't where you wanted it to go, at least make it interesting.
Mine, I gave it a 62 out of 100.
Yeah, I give it a 43. Yeah, I think you can definitely tell we have two different ways, that we go about it, especially when it comes to animation and stuff like that. You, at one point, wanting to be an animator, I think it gives you a different eye and different things that you look at. I'm very story-driven.
Okay, so there's our ratings down below somewhere. You'll see ratings of, Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, and the IMDb ratings. You see how we compare to them. And as always, down below in the comment section, look at them. Tell us if you agree or disagree with what we're saying. But for now, we're going to get ready and we're going to move on to The Long Halloween. Oh, Mystery Machine around the corner.